And I spoke with U.S. State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott about the ongoing conflict, specifically how far President Trump is willing to go if Russian President Vladimir Putin does not end his bloody war with Ukraine. This is what he had to say.
Well, I'm not going to preview what decision the president may make. What I can say is what he's spoken to, and he's outlined clear options that he has in terms of actions he may take. He's also been incredibly transparent in terms of how he views recent actions that Russia has taken. It's a credit to this administration that we have seen efforts to get the sides of the table in terms of trying to get that ceasefire. But as the president has said, we need to see actions, not words, when it comes to moving towards a ceasefire and then hopefully a long and enduring peace. The president's been very clear. He's outlined what options he may take. I don't want to get ahead of the president, but we'll see what decision he makes when the time comes.
What consequences do you see happening if Russia fails to end the war by the deadline? Is military action, for example, on the table?
Look, President Trump has been very clear in terms of the options that he's considering. Again, the primary driver here being ending the bloodshed and stopping this conflict.
You know, we see President Trump set a deadline for Iran to reach a deal with the U.S. on its nuclear enrichment. Iran did not meet Trump's deadline, and then 10 days later, we all know the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities. If it does attempt to start rebuilding its nuclear enrichment facilities, will those need to be taken out as well?
Well, I don't want to speculate on what may happen, but I can talk about what we are doing. A maximum pressure policy instituted by President Trump to deny revenue from the illicit sale of oil to the Iranian regime that they use to fund their destabilizing activities, including their nuclear program, including sending money to terrorist death squads around the region, including oppressing their own people. We are seeing an unprecedented number of sanctions targeting that supply chain to keep Iran from benefiting from their illicit oil sales. We're going to continue to have that policy, again, being open to these discussions with the Iranian regime. The president, like I said, is a peacemaker. So we're seeing action to deny revenue that they need for their destabilizing activities, while at the same time, the door is open to discussions that can hopefully lead to long-term prosperity for the Iranian people, for the United States, for the entire region.
We see, meanwhile, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee visiting Gaza Strip this week. President Trump is saying that the food and famine situation in Gaza is a problem. That is putting it mildly. What needs to be done to ensure that food get to those who so desperately need it, as well as returning the remaining hostages taken during that October 7th attack?
Our heart breaks when we see these images. And President Trump is a humanitarian at heart. That's why we're seeing this level of engagement. That's why we're seeing the special envoy, Ambassador Huckabee, going to Gaza to see firsthand what is happening there. What we've done from the administration's perspective is support the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has delivered 100 million meals to the people of Gaza without it being looted by Hamas. And that last portion is important because when Hamas is able to loot aid, they weaponize it against the people of Gaza. Hamas is waging war against the people of Gaza by denying ceasefires, continuing this conflict, attempting to weaponize aid. The president's also made clear that we want to do everything we can to get as much aid as possible into Gaza to the people that need it, while also ending this conflict. Because the bottom line is, as this conflict continues, it will never be enough. It'll never be enough. But we are working every single day to get as close as possible and to feed as many people as we possibly can.
We see Secretary Rubio and White House officials criticizing our Western allies like Canada, like the UK, for saying they will recognize Palestinian statehood going forward. In the view of the United States, how does this complicate ceasefire, a potential deal between Israel and Hamas?
Well, as the Secretary said, what we see with a lot of these recognitions is a timetable, is a timeline, where if we don't see an end to this conflict by a certain date, then they'll recognize this state, without recognizing that Hamas is the reason we don't have a ceasefire. Hamas is the only reason why this war zone continues. So as the president said, these efforts are rewarding Hamas. Can be definitely viewed that way, or even encouraging Hamas to avoid a ceasefire. The same day that Hamas rejected the ceasefire proposal that Israel had accepted, that same day was the day that France, for example, decided to announce they were going to recognize a Palestinian state. So the president's been clear, the secretary's been clear, this could be seen as rewarding Hamas. And any effort in rewarding Hamas for their actions complicates the peace process, because the only reason this conflict continues is because of Hamas.
Is it the United States' position that Hamas and Palestine are one and the same, or are we conflating the two?
Most definitely not one and the same. I mean, with Hamas, we need to separate Hamas from the Gazan people. That could be one way of even viewing it, with Hamas waging war against the people of Gaza. That is what they have been doing through their actions again and again. waging war against the people of Gaza, waging war against Israel. Hamas is the actor here that is continuing this conflict. And part of the reason why Hamas cannot continue to exist is the long-term peace and prosperity we want to see in Gaza for the people of Gaza that is made impossible so long as Hamas continues to exist.
Last question for you. Special Envoy Witkoff is heading to Russia after his trip to Gaza. What will his message be to Vladimir Putin?
Well, ultimately, our fundamental policy here is ending the conflict, stopping the bloodshed. That has been our driving motivation. It's a credit to the leadership of this administration that we've seen the parties come to the table before. We need to see them come back to the table, reach that ceasefire, reach that long and enduring peace. It's ultimately up to the parties, but we stand ready to help in the pursuit of peace because ultimately we want to see a stop to this carnage.
All right, State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.